They told us we'd seen everything, that every frame from Apollo 11 had already been released, that every second of Armstrong's descent, Aldrin's footsteps, the flag, the surface, had been archived, dissected, and publicized for decades. But that was a lie, and I can prove it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked for NASA's Internal Archival Division from 2004 to 2012. My job was to digitally preserve analog footage from the Apollo missions, restoring, categorizing, and preparing it for public release. And that's when I found it, a reel labeled only with the numbers 17B. It wasn't in the official index. It wasn't part of any public mission log. It had no timestamp, no audio ID, nothing. Just a handwritten label, "Do not transfer, not cleared for release." Naturally, I assumed it was junk, maybe a duplicate, maybe mislabeled. I was wrong. I remember the feeling before I even hit play. The room got quiet, like the film itself was holding its breath. The footage was black and white, like most of the other Apollo recordings. At first, it looked normal. Lunar terrain, static camera, one astronaut, stepping out of the LEM. But then, the camera shifts, not accidentally, intentionally, almost like someone behind it wanted to show something specific, and what it captured wasn't a crater, it was a structure. I paused the reel, rewound, watched again. This wasn't a rock formation. It wasn't shadows or camera glitches. It was geometric sharp edges, symmetrical. A door embedded in the side of a ridge, perfectly rectangular with markings around the frame, not like NASA lettering. Not English, not Russian, more like symbols etched into the stone, glowing faintly. And then the audio kicked in. Not from the camera mic, from an internal feed. Astronaut breathing, tension. And then Armstrong's voice, the real voice, said something that I will never forget. "Houston, I'm going to step inside, tell them we were wrong." Then static. No response from Houston, no further footage, just a flicker. And then black. But the timer kept rolling. There were 17 minutes of black screen, 17. And when the image finally returned, only one astronaut was visible, and he was screaming. No audio, just visuals. He was floating above the surface and not on it, as if gravity had lost its grip. His limbs twisted unnaturally, his helmet cracked, and behind him, a shadow, a massive one, too big to be human, too fluid to be mechanical, and too real to be ignored. I tried to pull the footage, export it, save a frame, but before I could finish, the terminal froze. The lights in the lab flickered, and a message appeared on the screen. "Access terminated, level 9 restriction." I had never seen that clearance level before, and I never saw that footage again, because the next morning the reel was gone. No evidence it had ever existed, and I was reassigned, 2 pay grades down, no explanation. But I remember what I saw, and now that NASA is beginning to quietly release certain archives from Apollo 11, I know what's coming. They'll say it's corrupted data, that it's misidentified telemetry, that there was never a 17B reel. But I promise you, what they found on the moon wasn't just a step for mankind, it was a door, and we opened it. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Armstrong's voice in my head. Tell them we were wrong. Wrong about what? The moon, the mission, or us? The next morning I went back to my workstation, room 4B, archival wing, only to find it locked. I had been locked out of my own lab. No badge access, no one responding to my calls. My name wasn't even listed on the active roster anymore. I asked a coworker, Phil from digitization, what was going on. He looked at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "Didn't you transfer out last week?" he asked. "Last week? I was working here yesterday. Something was wrong. I went home. My apartment was untouched. My laptop was still logged into the internal network, something I should have been kicked out of the moment my clearance was revoked, and that's when I saw it. A file sitting in my private folder, unlabeled, no timestamp, no sender. I clicked it, and instantly my screen went black, not off, not crashed, replaced, with a still image, that same door, the one from the footage. Except this time, it was open. A hallway stretched beyond it, dimly lit, metallic yet clearly ancient, like something built by intelligence but forgotten by time. And at the end of that hallway, a figure, not an astronaut, not human. I blinked, and the screen returned to normal. The file was gone, no trace in the temp folder, no metadata. But I knew what I saw, and it wasn't hallucination. It was a warning. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started receiving emails from dead addresses, literally. Senders listed as Decommissioned NASA Division ID 17384, no subjects, only attachments, images, fragments of data, spectrograms of audio files that didn't match any human vocal pattern, and one document, one I'll never forget. It was a report, internal, classified, buried under 7 levels of clearance. Apollo 11, non-biological entity contact, codename Threshold. There were diagrams of neurological scans, blood work from astronauts showing protein markers that don't exist on Earth. Audio transcripts of long, silent recordings followed by single bursts of foreign speech. None of this was ever made public. None. All of it is supposed to exist, and the last page was redacted almost entirely, except for one line. Exposure beyond 12 seconds results in irreversible cognitive distortion. Do not view raw footage. Do not replicate field audio. It wasn't just about what they saw. It was about what they heard, because whatever they encountered, it wasn't just visual. It was resonant. It imprinted itself on their minds. It rewrote how they perceived reality. And now I was showing the same symptoms. I started hearing static in silence. I'd wake up at 3:33 a.m. every night with the same phrase echoing in my mind. The door does not open. The door remembers. My dreams changed. I wasn't just seeing the moon, I was on it, standing in the dark corridor behind that door, not wearing a suit, not breathing, and ahead of me, not shadows, but eyes, thousands of them, watching, studying, waiting. One night, I found scratches on my bedroom wall, perfectly rectangular, 4 straight lines, side by side, like claw marks, but burned into the drywall. I live alone. The next morning, my phone was wiped. Not just reset, wiped, contacts, photos, messages, all gone, except one thing. A voice memo created at 3:33 a.m. I pressed play. It was my voice, but I didn't remember recording it. All it said was, "We were never supposed to leave Earth. The moon is not a rock, it's a vault, and now it knows I've seen inside." I needed out of the apartment, out of the system, and off the radar. I packed a bag and headed to a friend's cabin in northern Colorado. No internet, no cameras, no digital trail, just a wood stove, canned food, and silence. But silence is different now. It used to be peaceful. Now it's active, like something's inside it. On my second night, I noticed the stars weren't in the right place. I've lived my whole life under these skies. I know Orion, I know Cassiopeia, but they were off, tilted subtly, like the sky had been rotated a few degrees to the left. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but then the moon rose, and I froze, because it wasn't full, it wasn't a crescent, it was wrong. Not in shape, in texture. It didn't look like a celestial object. It looked like a surface seen through glass, shimmering, pulsing, with faint lines moving across it, not craters, veins. And worse, I felt it watching me, not metaphorically, literally, like something behind that surface was leaning closer. I locked the cabin door, shut off the lantern, and sat in the dark, waiting for sunrise. It never came. At least, not in the way it should have. When light finally broke over the trees, the sun was too large, too orange. It rose too slowly, like someone was dragging it manually across the horizon. That's when I realized, it's not just me. Reality is beginning to crack. I needed to speak to someone, anyone, so I drove into town, found a payphone. Yes, a real one. I dialed a number from memory. Dr. Emil Hartmann, retired physicist and former NASA consultant. I'd met him once during a conference on radiation exposure in archival material. He was sharp, paranoid, perfect. He answered after one ring, but before I could speak, he said, "You saw the footage, didn't you?" I froze. "Don't answer," he said. "Just listen. You're going to start seeing discontinuities. Gaps in cause and effect. Things will feel slightly out of phase. Your body will adapt before your mind does. That's the trap." "What do I do?" I whispered. "You've already done it." "You looked." He paused, then added, "The moment you observe the anomaly, it begins observing you back. It's quantum. It's reflexive. That's why they buried it." My hands were shaking. "Is it alive?" I asked. He laughed. A quiet, bitter laugh. "Alive isn't the word. It's not biological, it's not intelligent in a way we understand. It's a recording, a recursive, reactive imprint of something older than cognition." "You mean it's a memory?" "Worse. It's a thought that thinks, 'You back!'" The call cut off, not disconnected, just silenced, like someone hit mute on the universe. When I looked down at the payphone, the numbers were gone, wiped clean. I returned to the cabin, heart pounding, only to find my bag was missing. So was my car. But the cabin door wide open. Inside on the table was a VHS tape. No label, no case, just a sticker. 17B, copy 2. I don't own a VHS player. I never brought one. But sitting next to the tape was a small portable player, plugged into nothing, and it was on. The screen flickered, then the image appeared, but this time it wasn't the moon. It was me, as I am right now, sitting in the cabin, staring into the screen, and behind me something was moving. I didn't turn away. Even as I watched myself on screen, same clothes, same posture, I kept staring. Because the figure behind me, it was still but waiting. It wasn't a shadow, it had definition, height, width, no features but definite mass. It stood exactly where the door would be, just outside the cabin frame. But when I turned around in real life, there was nothing. No figure, no distortion, just the door half open, creaking slightly with the wind. I turned back to the screen, and on it, the figure had moved closer to me, except now it wasn't just behind me. It was mimicking me, matching my head tilt, my breath, the exact moment I blinked. Not like a reflection, like a second self, learning how to wear my face. And then the screen glitched. A high-pitched sound pierced the room. Not mechanical, organic, like laughter with no mouth. I fell backward, grabbing the VHS player and yanking the tape out. Silence. I dropped it, stepped away, breathing heavy, heart pounding. And that's when I noticed the windows were wrong. Not broken, wrong. Outside didn't match what I remembered. There were too many trees. The sky was a dark amber, like sunset stretched too thin. And the shadows, they weren't moving with the wind. They were moving on their own. I had to leave, but when I stepped outside, as the car wasn't just missing, the road was gone, only grass. Thick, black, wet, like the ground had been soaked in oil and forgotten how to be earth. I turned back to the cabin, but it wasn't the cabin anymore. It had shifted. The wood was now metal, old rusted steel, like a shipwreck rebuilt into a structure. Windows sealed shut. No door. And yet, from inside, I could hear the VHS tape playing again. Same sound, same static. Except now, it was speaking, in my voice. He watched the footage. He became the footage. The footage is now watching. You. I fell to my knees. I realized this wasn't a dream, it wasn't a simulation. It was a recording. I wasn't living anymore. I was being replayed, and the tape wasn't from 1969. It was from tomorrow. Suddenly, the sky split, like a film reel tearing in half. And through the tear, I saw Earth, not from orbit, from above orbit. The moon was below me, rotating wrong. showing sides that don't exist. I looked down and saw myself inside a capsule. Apollo 11. Except I was never an astronaut. But there I was, sitting, breathing. Watching the camera in front of me powered on, and I said, "We never landed, we were placed." I don't know how long I was suspended above the moon. Time doesn't work here. It's not a line, it's not a loop, it's stacked, layered like old film reels melted together. Every time I blink, I fall into another frame, another version of myself, waking up somewhere I don't recognize, only to realize that I've already been there. Or worse, that I never left. I was back in the Apollo capsule. No helmet, no suit. Just me alone, drifting in a spacecraft that was never meant to return. The control panels were active, but they displayed symbols instead of numbers, pictographs, like Egyptian, hieroglyphs mixed with machine logic, and every screen repeated the same image. The doorway from the moon opening, closing, opening, a heartbeat of stone and shadow. I tried to speak, to scream, but no sound came out, only static. It poured from my throat like reversed audio, glitching the air around me. The cabin lights flickered, then dimmed, and in the window, I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. Not fully. My eyes were black, not dark, black like polished obsidian, and my mouth was open, but my face wasn't moving. It was out of sync. I reached for the emergency panel. It peeled off like paper, not metal, not plastic, set dressing, and behind it, a wall of VHS tape spinning, spooling, endless. That's when I remembered something Dr. Hartman had said. You looked too long. Now you're part of it. The footage doesn't show events, it generates them. It hit me like gravity being turned back on. I was never supposed to see the tape, not because of what it showed, but because it needed a vessel. And the moment I saw it, I became eligible. I became writable media. Suddenly, alarms blared in the E capsule. Not Apollo alarms. Deeper, mechanical, rhythmic. And then, a voice over the comms. But it wasn't NASA. It wasn't human. It spoke in a stuttered cadence, like language being assembled for the first time. Recording integrity compromised. Vessel. Consciousness resisting overwrite. Execute stabilization sequence. Now. The capsule shook. Light strobed. Reality blurred. Literally. My hand turned to static for a moment, flickered, returned. I grabbed my leg. It felt hollow, like a projection fighting to hold shape. The walls around me peeled back. Behind them, the moon. Not as it is, as it was, before humans, before craters, before time. Smooth, black, covered in symbols. A sphere made of thought and memory, and from the surface, rising slowly. The doorway opened again, and this time it was calling my name, not through sound, but through memory. It whispered flashes of moments I never lived. Births, wars, sunsets from alien skies, as if trying to fill me with content so I could be stored. Screamed. The sound didn't leave my mouth, and it left through the speakers, echoing into space, and the voice returned. Overwrite complete in 9, 8. I reached for the nearest wire, ripped it out. Electricity surged into my chest, and suddenly I woke up. Back in my apartment, cold sweat. Familiar ceiling, no moon, no capsule, no doorway, just me. Alive. But when I looked down at my arm, there were time codes etched into the skin, scrolling, updating, like I was still recording. I stayed in bed for hours, afraid to move, afraid to breathe wrong. The time codes on my arm kept ticking, slow, steady, glowing faintly under the skin, like a projector beaming from the inside out. They weren't random. Every few seconds, one would blink red. And when that happened, I'd see things, not hallucinations, not dreams, snapshots, a corridor made of bone, a man in an Apollo suit with no face, a planet, not Earth, shattering in reverse, its pieces floating inward. Each time a red blink appeared, another image, and always, followed by one phrase somewhere in the background like a corrupted whisper, "You are not the original." I knew I needed help, real help. I drove for hours, no phone, no electronics. I remembered an old contact, Diana Monroe, a data analyst who once worked on SETI's deep radio projects. If anyone could decode what was happening, it was her. Found her in a weathered house off a back road in Nevada. When she saw me, she didn't speak. She just pointed to my arm and said, "They've started writing to you." She brought me inside, turned off every light and handed me a piece of copper wire. "Hold this," she said, "and close your eyes. Tell me what you hear." I thought it was nonsense until I did it. The moment I closed my eyes, I heard the footage, not as video, but as language. It wasn't English. Not any language I knew, but I understood it, because it wasn't made of words, it was made of memories, not mine, someone else's, or something else's. They were inserting themselves into my brain, file by file, frame by frame. Diana began scanning my arm with a custom rig, a radiation detector hacked into a waveform reader. What she found chilled her. "You're emitting patterns, like a beacon. The footage didn't just overwrite you, it's using you to send a signal back." "To where?" I asked. She hesitated. Maybe not where. Maybe when. Before I could respond, her laptop lit up. Lines of binary flooded the screen. Then shifted. Letters, words, a message. Recording stable environment recognized merge sequence, 14%. Diana stepped back, whispering, "Oh my God, it's trying to synchronize you with this version of reality." "What happens when it reaches?" 100%. Her eyes met mine. "You won't be you anymore. You'll be the recording. Walking, speaking, broadcasting." I looked down at the time codes. The next blink was red. And then I saw something I shouldn't have. The White Room, not from NASA, from whatever came before, a place outside of space where the moon was built, where thoughts became matter and standing. In the center, me, but not me, a version of me made of static, of camera glitches and rewind streaks. He looked up and smiled. "You're almost home." I dropped the wire and fell to my knees. Blood from my nose hit the floor in perfect geometric patterns, not splatters, symbols. The room began to shake. Diana grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me. This isn't possession. This is replication. You're being printed." Then the power cut. The house went dark, but outside, every radio tower in town lit up red and began broadcasting a sound no one should ever hear. The red glow from the radio towers didn't fade. It pulsed, not randomly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. I stepped outside with Diana, and we could hear, thanks to a low hum carried by the wind, barely audible to the ear, but deeply felt in the chest. It wasn't just noise, it was data. "Do you hear that modulation?" she asked, pressing her fingers to her temples. "It's layered, multi-band transmission. Old Cold War tech used to send messages like that. Only this one isn't targeting satellites." "Then what is it targeting?" I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because just then we saw headlights in the distance, a black SUV, unmarked, no plates. It stopped near the tower. 3 figures stepped out. They wore what looked like hazmat suits, but sleeker. No logos, no names. They moved without hesitation, heading straight to the tower's base, then began scanning the air with devices shaped like tuning forks. Diana pulled me back inside. "Are those NASA?" I whispered. "No," she replied. "Worse. They're from the Signal Division. I've never heard of that. You're not supposed to." She opened her laptop. Despite the blackout, it had full power, and began typing into a hidden OS partition. Lines of green code lit up the screen. Then a map. Dots. Thousands of them. All across the globe, each one pulsing red. Every one of. "These is a transmitter site," she said. "All synced to the same frequency. All activated within the last 72 hours. What's it transmitting?" She clicked on one node in Kazakhstan. A spectrogram opened. It was my voice. "We never landed. We were placed." Another node in Brazil. Same voice, slightly warped. "You are the copy, not the source." And another in South Africa. Now my voice wasn't even English. It was a glitching chorus of tones that still carried my cadence. The recording isn't just inside me, it's using me as a seed. And from that seed, clones are blooming worldwide. Diana turned slowly. "You said you saw yourself in the footage, right? That you were watching yourself?" I nodded. That's because you're one of many versions, not the first, not the last, and maybe not the real one. I felt sick. What am I then? A mirror. For something that doesn't have a reflection. Until now. She showed me a file one she had captured during a SETI project, months before I ever found the real. It was labeled Echo, Apollo 11 Original Instance, Do Not Reply. The waveform wasn't normal. It looked like a heartbeat made of triangles, fractals layered on themselves. Diana hit play, and for a moment, the house wasn't there. We were standing on the moon, not the one from NASA photos, the real one. The one before the edits. It wasn't dead, it was pulsing, breathing, and around us hundreds, no thousands out of people stood in suits, all identical, all broadcasting the same phrase in perfect, delayed unison. This is the original, all recordings. Revert to me. And just like that, we were back. The house was intact. The towers were still humming, but something had changed. My time codes had stopped ticking. In their place, a new message, etched into the skin like a burn, uploaded successfully, and below it, a countdown. Furlasti. Diana, I said, what happens when it hits 0? Her eyes filled with terror. That's not a countdown, that's a sync threshold. And when it hits 0, the original won't just overwrite you, it will arrive. The countdown burned under my skin. It was hours, 12 minutes, 57 seconds. It wasn't just a timer, it was a merging sequence. The signal wasn't infecting me anymore. It was preparing to replace me, and I could feel it. Every memory I had was slowly being overwritten. My father's voice gone, replaced with mission control static. My first kiss, replaced with the feeling of lunar dust under my nails. Even my reflection in the mirror began to desync, blinking a half second after I did, like a corrupted video feed buffering reality. I told Diana I needed to stop it, tear the source. Out at the root, but she said something I'll never forget. You can't delete a signal that's already been received. You can only try to stop the next broadcast. We had to go back to where it started. Not the cabin, not NASA. The crater. Diana had a contact in Arizona, a private satellite operator with access to lunar scans not available to the public. We drove 16 hours straight, through a desert that felt more fictional the farther we went. The trees didn't look right. They leaned the wrong way, the clouds moved too slow, and every few miles we'd see people standing by the road. Just standing, eyes closed, mouths slightly open, all facing the same direction, the moon. We didn't stop. When we arrived, her contact, a man named Reed, showed us something horrifying, a live thermal scan of the moon's sea of tranquility. There was movement below the surface in a pattern that matched neural activity. It's thinking, Reed whispered. I don't know what it is, but it's not dead rock. It's dreaming. I asked him to check for anomalies in the footage timestamps. He hesitated, then pulled up a file. It showed the Apollo 11 landing site reanalyzed frame by frame. There was something new, a sixth shadow, not Armstrong, not Aldrin, not the lander. It moved independently, frame to frame, but never showed a source. And in one frame, the shadow turned toward the camera, toward me, except the footage was from 1969, and I hadn't been born yet. How could it know? Reed backed away, panicked. You need to leave, both of you. This thing, it's recursive. The more we look at it, the deeper it gets, like it's feeding off awareness. Diana stared at the screen and whispered, he's not seeing the future. He's seeing the recording catching up to him. That night I collapsed in the motel, not from exhaustion, from displacement. I woke up in a room that looked like mine. But it wasn't mine. The walls were breathing, the floor pulsed beneath my feet. The television turned on by itself, a single channel, black and white footage of me, watching myself. I spoke on screen. He's almost ready. Then, static and a new scene, a lunar surface. The camera moved slowly, crawling across the grey soil, and revealed a structure half buried in shadow. Not man-made, not alien, but logical, like a thought rendered in stone. I recognized it. It was the doorway. But this time it was open. Suddenly I felt it. In my body. My spine straightened on its own, my mouth opened, and I said something without choosing to. Local host integrity achieved, preparing arrival of primary instance. The countdown on my arm hit 02 Rigaucon 2 hours, and I knew, when that timer hit 0, I would disappear. But not like death, like replacement. A perfect overlay. One consciousness swapped for another. And the worst part? I could feel him already. The original, waking up beneath the moon, stretching inside the void I left open by looking too long. And once he arrives, no one will remember I was ever here. 1:34. I stood in the desert, just sand, wind, and sky. Diana was gone. Disappeared an hour ago, mid-sentence, like she'd been edited out, not killed, erased. The radio towers had gone silent, but I could still feel their presence, like ghost signals vibrating under my skin. My thoughts weren't mine anymore. I'd try to remember something, my childhood. My mother's laugh, the smell of home, but the tape would rewind, playing over them with grayscale footage of the doorway, always the doorway, always waiting. 1 Joe 1. I screamed, clawed at my skin, tried to rip the time code off, tried to scream, loud enough to break the pattern, but my voice echoed in a language I never learned. The moon was full overhead, and now it was watching me back, literally. A shape formed on its surface, a dark slit, like a pupil. The moon wasn't a rock, it was an eye, and I was its reflection. With 34. I fell to my knees. Tears blurred my vision. The sand around me was pulsing with binary code now, black grains rising, forming lines, then collapsing again. I felt something rise behind me. A presence, not heavy, not loud, just perfect, like a correction being made. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I knew the original had arrived. So, 05, I whispered, "Please, let me stay, even just a shadow." And from behind me, a voice I've never heard, but had always. No, Nim answered, "You were never the shadow. You were the film, and the real has ended." So to out on darkness, silence. Then, the sound of a VHS clicking into place, a whir, a hiss, and a new image. It's not me, it's him, standing in my body, wearing my face. But cleaner, sharper, like a digitally enhanced version of the human I used to be, and behind his eyes the static glows, slow and pulsing. He blinks, looks into the camera, and speaks. "This is Apollo 11, Commander transmitting from Sequence 0, synchronization complete. Host absorbed. Recording begins now." He smiles, and in the reflection of his cornea, I see Earth, but not our Earth, a newer one. Simpler, blank, ready to be overwritten. Final transmission. I don't know who will hear this, or if this message can even be heard. It may be broadcast. Only inside thought itself, but if you ever find a tape, a reel, a forgotten file from 1969, don't watch it, because it's not footage, it's a key. And once it's in your mind, you've already turned the lock.